For us to do right now. I know people are going to be drifting in and out for the next couple of minutes, grabbing pastries. Please eat pastries, don't feel you've got to take it out there. Eat your pastries in here or whatever. I think there's plenty left. Take them home with you if you want to. It's really not a problem. Obviously, I threw out the case study, the first one. Just if you want to chat amongst yourselves, just for like a minute or two, with the questions in mind that I posed from the earlier session. What I'll do at the same time is I'll give you this one. I said we were doing a couple of case studies of films, and she said, "You're doing the Eternals. You hated that film." Because that was one of the ones that where I learned at the end of it not to rip a film to shreds just after someone's enjoyed it. But there we go. Can I say in all of these things as well? It's really important. In our approach in terms of dealing with people. Christ says, we're to love the Lord our God and to love our neighbour as ourselves. He goes into a little bit more detail with that, and we see that a little bit more in the epistles, because if you've got your Old Covenant, and you've got Jesus who kind of really sheds light on the Old Covenant, and you've got the epistles that really shed light on the teachings of Jesus. And so you kind of go back, and it says, not only are we called to love our neighbour as ourselves, but especially those who are of the household of God. The commandments are there and it's wrapped up, but it is really important for us to remember that, all of the things that we do, particularly when it comes to apologetics and things, we're not looking to get into an argument with people. You can win an argument and lose the person. For anyone that's married here or got children or whatever, you'll probably know that to be true. It's just like you want to be right to the point that actually you lose the other person. And what I've learned is just as you do over years, you're just going to go, actually, that's not a battle. It's worth fighting, really. I don't want to be in an argument over that, and I certainly don't want to win the argument and lose you. Now, what I'm saying in that is I'm not saying don't therefore stand for truth. If there's a biblical truth that's at risk, I will not leave somebody believing that I believe something other than the Bible. But what I'm saying is I'm not in this to win arguments. I'm in this to win people for Christ. And so remember, whoever you're talking to, whoever's in front of you, is someone who's created in the image of God in the same way that you are. They were knitted together in their mother's womb. They have all this potential, and God loves them. Jesus Christ died for, the world. And so I need to remember that when I'm talking to people. I remember talking to a Mormon. I spend a lot of time talking to Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, and people of other faiths, because they're people that need to be one. They're leading people astray, but they're also disillusioned themselves. It's no different to a teacher that teaches kids something wrong about evolution. Do you see what I'm saying? So I remember talking to a Mormon once, and this Mormon hugged me at the end of the conversation, nearly in tears, and just said, "You're the first Christian that's treated me with respect." And it broke my heart, because you think that shouldn't be the case. That should not be the case. This is still a human being that I'm talking to. I totally disagreed with them, but we were able to hug at the end of the conversation. Do you see? And I've had Jehovah's Witnesses kept visiting my house for 3 months before they finally gave up. But for 3 months they came in, they drank cups of tea. This one lady, she kept bringing different people back from her church, saying, look at these arguments, listen to these arguments. It's interesting, isn't it? Because I was trying to challenge them and get them thinking about what they were looking at, rather than just say, no, sorry, I don't believe what you believe. Shut the door. Do you see? So, our heart is actually, the person stood in front of us. We may not agree with what they're doing, but let's not engage in the same way the world does by saying, well, because you don't agree with what I believe, therefore then I'm going to write you off. That's not actually a Christian approach. Because God didn't write anyone off, did he? We all were going a wrong way, and he didn't write us off, he came after us. So my heart is to go after people, but I will stand for truth. So if I've been sat in a police car, chatting with it's not a checkered past, don't worry. But I was sat because someone had been shadowing me as a work placement type thing, And he said to me at the end of it, he said, do you believe that if you don't believe the gospel, that you do actually go to hell? And I knew his sister had died. And, you want to soften the blow, don't you? But I knew full well, and I really felt at that moment, it was almost like God saying, you've got a choice. You can soften the blow, or you can tell him the truth. And he asked me again, and I said, well, because I was like, well, it depends, they might pray a prayer on the deathbed. He said, that's not what I'm asking. He said, if no one's prayed that prayer, if no one has actually given their life, if someone hasn't given their life to Christ and they've died, do you believe they go to hell? And I said, yeah. He said, right, thanks very much. I got out and shut the door. And that was it. I thought that was the end of it. A couple of months later, I'm at a place where I'm giving a presentation on shadowing me and everything else. He basically bigged us up no end. These guys do so much good in the community. They're doing furniture projects. They do this thing. And do you know what? They so believe what they believe, and this is what they believe. And he preached the gospel better than I could to all these people. He hadn't believed it, but he'd got it. He'd understood it. And I thought, actually, I didn't compromise at that moment. I didn't go, do you know what I mean? I want to win him. So do you see what I'm saying? We don't want to lose people by trying to win the argument, but we still have to preach truth, and that's just really important in these things. So it's the same with these things. I watch these films, I'll engage with people in these things, but at the same time, I will look for the signs and opportunities to win people through it, because that's what I'm looking for. So here we go. 4 weddings and a funeral then. So shall we dissect it? Would that be all right? Are you all right dissecting that film? If it was a film that you absolutely loved and really enjoyed, then please don't feel like... I heard one preacher say on this film, I disagreed with him, but he said, if you call yourself a Christian and watch that film, he said, I would struggle with that. I was just like, well, that's a bit harsh. He'd never watched it to the end. He'd literally just watched the first couple of minutes where the F word occurs 5 times or something like that. And he was just like, But I'd also heard another preacher say, if you watch EastEnders and call yourself a Christian, then you're gonna struggle. And it's just like, I'm thinking, well, I don't know, because most of the people at that time were watching EastEnders because it was the Dirty Den and kind of Angie days. Do you know what I mean? It's like everyone watched EastEnders. It's just one of those things. So we've got to be careful that we don't go, because you watch that, therefore there's something wrong. I've got a very good Christian friend, and he will dissect any movie. Now, he will watch movies I would not go near. I'm particularly not keen on the horror genre. I might look up things about it, but I don't watch it because I just don't think it's helpful. But he can watch it totally kind of, he can watch it and he can step back from it and it doesn't affect him in any way, but he can really dissect that movie. Now, if he's got a gift to do that, fantastic, that's not my gift. So, that's okay. So please, some may have seen it, some may not have seen it, some may read this and go, oh, I'd never watched that now. Some may watch it and go, well, I might watch it again just to see what all the fuss was about. But here we go. So if we're going to ask those 4 questions, what message is this telling? Does this challenge God's truth in any way? If so, what scriptures support this? And in terms of being based on God's word, and how should I respond to this? What are the problems, or what are the main messages that you see coming out of what you've read or what you know of that film?
Just reading through that, it sort of destroys Christian marriage.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. It's probably the film I've seen that's been the most anti-marriage that I had seen in decades. But yeah, so I agree. Yeah. Anything else?
It's a comedy, isn't it? So it's funny to be anti-marriage as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so it almost makes a mockery of it or a joke of it, and commitment. Yeah.
There's a sense in which going back to what Matthew be saying, how the personal fulfillment of my own, desires and stuff are the key, the overriding motivation of the characters.
Absolutely. Yep, that's the other thing I would have written down. It's almost this sense of human love, however you want to define that, trumps anything. As long as you are happy. And those are the key messages coming through that film. A film that was very popular, 4 Weddings and a Funeral. A film that was very popular when it came out. Now, it's interesting because I came from a background where parents had separated and remarried and a couple of times, and that sort of thing. And so I'd experienced it. So even before I became a Christian, I had decided that your promise was your promise, and if I got married, I would marry for life. That was my decision before I'd even so then I get saved, and I'm just like, oh well, that's good, because it's just like, it's in the Bible. That's pretty cool. So and my now wife Pam, when we were together at the time, she was of the same mind. She said, whoever I meet, it's going to be the person I want to marry. And she said, in terms of if I don't think I'm going to marry them, then there's no point going any further forwards in terms of spending time together. And so we were both very clear on that. And that's been it. Now, I could stand up here and say to you, do you know what, we've been married for over 30 years, and do you know what, it's been a bed of roses. You know what I mean? It's just been, it's just like, it's just been so easy. It's just like, I'd be lying to you, because the truth is that marriage is a commitment. It's love is an act of the will. It's not just this gooey feeling that you get. Don't get me wrong, you get the gooey feelings as well. But actually, there have been times in our marriage, particularly, I've got to hold my hand up, where we're actually, it's hit those moments. I remember one time we hit a moment in our marriage where the only thing that was holding us together was our commitment to one another. Once a week, my wife would drive, we were living in the Peak District at the time, we'd drive down out of the peaks at night in the winter. I'd let her do it on her own because I wasn't going, to go and see some friends of ours, just to go and get some advice and help about how to navigate this rocky patch that we were going through. And I was too pig-headed to even go with her, do you know what I mean? It was just like, well, if you think it needs fixing, you go get it fixed. I'm all right, I'm quite happy, thank you very much. Put my feet up, got an evening on my own, didn't I? I could watch TV, what foot he's on. It was just like, it was that type of attitude and whatever, until one time she says, how would like to see you? And I'm thinking, oh no. He's an old pastor friend of mine, and he's just like, right, come on, what are you doing? And he talked some real sense into me, and I said, because actually we've got to work at it, and we hit those moments, and we want to be real with people when we're talking to people as well, because I've had that where we've helped people in their marriage, and they've gone, what, you? Because they think, okay, you're leading a church, you're a pastor, or whatever, oh, you must have it all sorted. Yeah, you gotta be kidding. You know what I mean? It's like, that's not how it works. It's just that, we all have limps, don't we? The issue, David was a man after God's own heart, but that wasn't because he did everything right. It's because actually when he got something that did it wrong, actually what did he do? He recognised his own sin and fell into God. The problem with Saul was he tried to blame everyone, including God. He was just like, Saul, you shouldn't be doing that. Oh yeah, it was your fault. You didn't turn up on time. It's just like, David, you shouldn't do that. Man, I'm really sorry, Lord, forgive me. That's a man after God's own heart. You might make a mistake, but it's how you fall. And so, having grown up like that, I then saw 4 weddings and a funeral, and it really offended me. Really offended me. Because I looked at this, and the conclusion at the end of it was, basically, you don't need to worry about getting married as long as you're happy. As long as you want to remain committed to one another, remain. And I'm just thinking, well then, say your wedding vows and be committed for life, in sickness and in health. I know people who have walked away from marriages because actually caring for the partner who's got sick has just become too much. Now, I'm not saying it's easy, but what I am saying is actually when you make that commitment and you make it before God, God is a God who makes promises that he never breaks. Is there a promise that God has ever broken? Can you think of one? There isn't, is there? He's a covenant-keeping God. And we make a covenant before God to one another and say, actually, for as long as we both shall live. Now, do not get me wrong on this. I think I would never encourage someone to stay in an abusive relationship, etc., etc. We've been in situations where we've had to almost give counsel to it and say, look, you need to get away from this situation. So I'm not saying, you come hell or high water and whatever, and put people in dangerous situations. And Jesus seems to kind of help us in that. So pastoral work is a challenging one, because sometimes you find yourself in and you think, okay, I haven't got the exact script for this. I've got kind of the guidelines, but actually this particular moment, I've got to take all these variables into consideration. But we live in a culture now that, again, is just very much, well, it doesn't suit me anymore, so I'm off. I just stopped feeling it, Well, that can happen after 6 months. You might have that lovely warm gooey feeling, then after about 6 months you have your first row and whatever and stuff and that, or 3 weeks, whatever it is, and you have your first row and sort of thing, you say, oh, I can't believe this, do you know what I mean? It's like, I can't believe they feel that. But they've grown up with a whole set of values and ways of thinking things, and you've grown up with sort of things, and all of a sudden you meet each other and it's all rosy, and then all of a sudden it's like you realise you totally disagree on money. And you've got to, and what this does is this reinforces this whole idea that marriage is just something you can take and leave. You take and leave. Oh, actually, well, I want to be with someone. So he was marrying this lady Henrietta, who he didn't really care for anyway. So he just kind of ditches her at the altar, which is probably the best thing to do in one sense, because at least he didn't go through with it and then want it. But you just kind of think, and also the whole thing of sleeping around. That is right the way through it. Even this lady who gets married, so she's now got a fiance, this Scottish guy, and it says she comes back to spend another night with him, the guy that she winds up with, just before she dashes off to go and get married with him. And you just think, so the whole thing is a mess. It's a complete mess. And this film is meant to be a feel-good, happy movie that at the end of it, you just kind of go, oh, didn't that end well? And you think, but you guys were actually just so ungodly in it.
And it's a mockery of death as well, doesn't it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, because it's the guy who died.
Yeah.
This is all happening.
Yeah.
It's all about, and it doesn't matter at the end, he's a nice guy, he's gone, and that's
absolutely.
the end, and there's...
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that's an interesting point with funerals as well, because what Matthew was saying about the whole thing that if you take God out of the equation, actually you don't find joy, you don't find happiness. I've had the privilege of going to funerals and people saying their farewells and taking funerals, and a Christian funeral is a moment of mourning for those because you're not going to see that person for a while, and so it's a long goodbye in one sense, but in another sense it's a celebration of the fact that actually they've gone to go and be with the Lord, and a celebration of their life, and I love that tension. It's really we celebrate, but we also agree because we're not going to see them for a while, something. But I've been at non-Christian weddings, and it's devoid of hope. I've been at one where it was actually said, that they hit such troubled times and none of us knew how to help them. Now they've gone. I'm thinking, if only I'd known them sooner. I've been able to speak so open tonight. You were going through that. I didn't know you. And I just think, so then it comes back to Matthew's thing about, how ready are we to row those lifeboats into the situations? And so he goes, so the thing with these types of films is you can watch them as long as you recognise the issues with them, because once you recognise the issues with them, you can then talk. Because in 1994 this was big, but I was able to talk to people and say, do you know what, it makes a mockery of marriage. And this is what I think about marriage and commitment. And you talk to people and you start to, I was able to talk to friends about, sex outside of marriage and why that was wrong. And, the coming together and the two becoming one flesh. And then it's like two bits of paper glued together. When you pull them apart, you've got bits of paper on each. And that's what happens if you keep doing it. In the end, you're covered in bits of paper from all these other people. And they're covered in bits of paper from all these other people. And I think it says in the write-up, one person, she says, she said, 33 partners or something like that, and you just think, my goodness, that would be a lot to unpick without the grace of God, in a marriage. And you just think, God doesn't give this advice because he's a meanie. God gives this advice because it's wise, because it's the best thing for us. Matthew 19, verses 4 to 6 says this, he, being Jesus, answered, have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female, and said, therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let not man separate. Hebrews 13, verse 4. Let marriage be held in honour among all, and let the marriage bed be undefiled, for God will judge the sexually immoral and the adulterous. So when he talks about sexual immorality in that context, it's about the marriage bed. Proverbs 18 verse 22. He who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favour from the Lord. There is another one about a nagging wife being in the corner, but we'll come to that another time. Genesis 2:24. Therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. Do you see? There's the scriptures. So not only is it, did I struggle with it on a this doesn't feel right level, I knew I struggled with it on a biblical level, and I was able to think, actually, there are scriptures where God talks about actually how important marriage is and how important it is to try and remain pure, before that, and so on and so forth, until in the end you get to that point where actually I can talk to people and say, do you think that's good? Some of the things you've highlighted, you say, actually, do you think maybe they were a bit of a mess there? And people will go, yes, actually, I can see that. Now I'm talking to people on a level. Do you see? I'm not going, well, I'm coming as a Christian and saying, I'm saying, actually, how healthy do you think that is? I remember the person who the guy who I spoke to, who probably saw the clearest about why sleeping around was wrong, wasn't a Christian. He was a non-Christian who he said, do explain to me why it's wrong to sleep around. And I explained it to him in a way I thought, okay, you're going to understand, as well as kind of, so I referenced the Bible, but I just said, look, these are the things that, it can do and whatever. And he said, yeah, I can see that. That really makes sense. Person he's been with now, he's been with, the next person he met, he stayed with. Love to say married her, didn't, but but it's just like small victories, eh? But it's like but I think that's I'm just like, okay, there was something there of the truth that had got in. My prayer is, okay, more of the truth. I'm just praying, okay, Lord, some of the other things I shared, I hope they get in at some point, because I want to see him come to Jesus, Okay, there we go. So that's that. Now you see, that's just all coming out of one comedy that was popular in 1994. Okay. Now Marvel are big, as we've talked about. They produced this wonderful film called The Eternals, based on some comic books and stuff and that. Have a quick skim through. You probably won't have time to read it all, so it's good. Have a quick skim through if you want, and then just ask those questions again. There we go. So maybe take 5 minutes just to have a think. What message, if anything, is this trying to tell? So what is the story? What are the messages within the story? Is it challenging God's truth in any way? And what scriptures you might be able to find to support that? And then ask yourself the question, how might I respond to this? Other than, man, that seems very complicated, and it starts at 5000 BC and then it goes to 512 and then 1512 and then it's here, then it's there, and there's all these names I don't understand. Does anyone get kind of just a sense of what the story or the messages that might be coming through it are?
Well, it has a positive view of homosexuality.
Yep. Okay, yeah. That's about page 5 or something like that. But yeah. Oh, there you go then. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. So. Yeah. Go on, carry on. So yeah. Because there's one of the lead characters, the hero. One of the heroes is in a same-sex relationship with a 13-year-old son. Yeah. Yeah.
Also poses quite interesting. It's very anti.
Yep.
Anti.
Yep. It is.
Definitely got the agenda.
Yeah, it has. And what's interesting with it, I'll carry on, maybe just kind of help you along here. You see, the thing is, the film is complicated. And on one level, you could watch it and just think, okay, that was a ripping good yarn. It was just one of those things that, it's just like almost this kind of like godlike species appears. So the basic synopsis is this. there are these creatures called the elementals, or whatever they are, the Eternals, sorry, and they are. They almost appear like they're protectors to protect against these deviants. These deviants are the baddies. And the baddies, what they do is they try to eradicate non-intellectual life to almost nurture intellectual life on the planet. So they might cause wars and various other things to happen. What it turns out is, though, that there is another being called a celestial, and a celestial is this being that basically brings order to the universe. So for a celestial to be born, they need a certain amount of intellectual life to consume to be able to survive. But as long as they survive, they bring order to the universe. So basically, this God has to survive to be able to keep the universe running. And so the deviants aren't necessarily now the bad guys, because they're nurturing and the reason why the Eternals don't know this is because their mind gets wiped every time a planet gets sorted or whatever. And Earth has now been selected for destruction. So the next celestial is due to appear and consume Earth. So they're going to consume Earth. These Eternals decide, actually, no, we like these humans, so we're going to fight for them. The deviants have been trying to encourage intelligent life, but they're still the baddies, and so on and so forth. A fight ensues. The celestial is stopped and decides not to destroy Earth at this particular moment in time. Just to help you out, the main baddie is very akin to Matthew's kind of description now of who's the bad guy in most press and films. It is the heterosexual white male. So he is the baddie now. The Superman-looking type guy, he is the baddie. He's the one that turns bad and everyone's got to fight against. The heroes are the others. Oh, that's a good point. What can you remember his name? His name is this. What's his name? That's it, Icarus. That's it. Yeah. And so you've got all these different characters. One of the arguments, actually, that I thought this message posed, that this film posed, and I really struggled with, was actually that you've now got this idea that there is this God-like creature, this celestial, who gets to decide our fate. And the response of humanity is, how dare they? And the response of the underlings, the Eternals, who actually work for this celestial, are, how dare he or she? Actually, this God has no right to decide our fate. Even if it means, because the question is actually, even if it means that the universe can't survive because this celestial needs to be reborn, yeah, absolutely, because we should not destroy humanity. Now, I don't know about you, but I have a problem with that on a certain level. Because what do you think that's challenging? Or what do you think it's saying?
I didn't follow what was said at the beginning, but the first thing I thought was it challenges the whole thing about creation.
Yes, yeah.
It says God is in control, he puts the stars into place.
Yeah.
Springtime harvest, summer, winter, those things will be, but God will sustain the earth until he sees fit.
Absolutely. I think you've nailed it in terms of, there's part of the gospel there. Do you know what I mean? In the beginning, God. You could just put a great big full stop there and teach on that for a year. Seriously. Yeah? In the beginning, God. It starts and ends in who? God. We often think the gospel is about us. The gospel's not. The gospel's about God. Is it not? It's good news for us. but did you know? But actually, the Bible. The Bible. It isn't. It's about God's relationship with mankind. It's not a manual on everything. It doesn't tell me how he formed the stars. It just tells me that he spoke them into being and he just flung them into place. I mean, I love that imagery. It's just like you can imagine him kind of just, oh, let's make a plough, or however, but you just get, it's that idea. He flung them into place. It's just this thing that actually, God is this all-powerful, creative being. Now, and we are but clay. the Bible would tell us. He is the potter, we are clay. Now, that's not liked in our current climate. This idea that actually we may not be rulers of our own lives. There may be someone higher than us. Smacks back to times of Tower of Babel. Let us build a tower for ourselves that we might be like God. This whole idea of wanting to climb and be like God, to be God. Because what is it? There's something in us that kind of goes, actually, the corrupt part of us goes, actually, we want to usurp this God. That's the enemy. That's what the enemy wanted to do. I want worship for myself, not for him. And we struggle with this. And this movie actually really peddles that message, but very subtly. Because this whole idea of actually, how dare any being tell us that he's more superior than humanity? How dare he? Or she. It's subtle, isn't it? But it's right through this thing. So at the end, it's like, yay, people have been saved and whatever and stuff. But what you've actually said is, but a godlike creature is wrong if they decide that they want to smite us and get rid of us. Yeah. Then you go and start reading the Bible and you read that actually, you're created in the image of God, but actually God can do whatever he will. So actually, the gospel isn't come to God and all your needs will be met and all your wants will be met. Who, since becoming a Christian, has had everything they've ever wanted delivered to them by God? I didn't see a single Ferrari out there, so I know, it's just like, dear Lord, I really need a fast car because sometimes I'm late, But actually, the reality is, how many of us have suffered since becoming a Christian? Have known sickness. I've known trials and challenge and difficulty. Do I fully understand God's ways? I shared earlier, didn't I, about losing a son, and I said, I had to get to the conclusion. The way through it for me was, do you know what? I will never understand this in this lifetime, but not my will, but yours. I have to say that. I have to say, Lord, if I will spend my whole life just tearing myself apart trying to find the answer to that question, if that becomes, the key, if I need to know the answer to that question, then I'm probably going to write off years. But if I can settle myself and say, it's okay, God's in agreement. Oh, no, sorry, but if I can settle myself and actually say, Lord, I may not know the answer to all the questions, but I trust that you're in control. And I do trust that he's in control. Then I give that to him. And I trust him. And then I do away with the arrogance around when I get to heaven, I've got loads of questions for God. Because I reckon when I get to heaven, I'll just be flat on my face worshipping him. We all go, I'll have loads of questions for him. And I think God says, no, you won't. That's going to be a glorious, wonderful day. And it's just like, we're going to be in glory. And, I don't think the first thing on my mind is, God, when we talked about that car that I liked, I don't think it's going to happen. I really don't, So, I think those questions will kind of just pale into insignificance in one sense. But a message that's being peddled that said that actually, we are the apex of humanity, of the universe. Humanity is, which we see in all our sci-fi films, which we see in a lot of our movies now. Actually, that goes right across the fact that actually we are not, God is. You and I are created. He is the creator. And we've got to be careful because that can creep into our churches. When we preach the gospel where we're saying, come to Jesus and all your needs will be met. And people get saved, they respond to the gospel and then they fall away at the first sign of trial or challenge. And it's because the full gospel hasn't been taught. Not every time, but sometimes, because actually what we're saying is, actually, that's not the case. Jesus will meet all your core needs. Jesus says you do not need to worry for tomorrow. He will provide. He will take care of you. It may not be in the way that you expect, but he will provide. Some Christians seem to have fabulous wealth. Some Christians seem to have very little wealth, but both of them have food on the table and a roof over their head because God promises those. Do you see? I don't understand why he's done that here and that here, other than the fact that he wants to reach the rich and the poor.
I think some of these superhero things
Yeah.
are sort of trying to compare these people to Christ. So Christ is just a superman.
Yes.
He's just a great personality. He's
Yeah.
not God.
Mm-hmm.
He's just a great human.
Absolutely.
I think there's some of that in there.
I think there is, absolutely. In fact, last week we were asked in church to write down the worst Christmas present we've ever been given. And I wrote down 2. And one of them was, I was actually given a superhero Jesus action figure. Because one of my family thought it would be really funny. And I got this thing, and it was they just thought it was a joke, it was Jesus as a superhero action figure sort of thing. I threw it in. It was just like, I was just not impressed. And Pam, my wife, she was like, well, you can't tell him. I said, yeah, I don't know. I'll talk to them at some point about why I wasn't impressed about it or whatever and stuff like that. But I just wasn't impressed with it. It just, because exactly that, I think it reduced Jesus rather than, it just made it a joke. And I wrestled with it, And so I agree with you on that. C.S. Lewis said this, didn't he? He said, any attempt to make Jesus out to be a good man is actually wrong. Because a man who said the things that he said can't just be a good man. He's either a liar, because he claimed to be God, a madman on the par with another man who might call himself a poached egg, or he's telling the truth, or he's the devil of hell, even worse, so it's one of 4 things. You can't be a good man and claim to be God, because you're lying. Do you see? You're deceiving. So you're not good. So you're mad. Does anyone remember David Icke? Yeah. This is sports presenter, wound up in a nice kind of like rowing out into a lake, wearing purple, kind of claiming to be the second coming of Christ, whatever and stuff and that. And I don't know what's happened to him now, but clearly got it wrong. And you say that and you think, that's crazy. That's what C.S. Lewis said. Jesus was either that, but he definitely wasn't. He did not leave open the door to say that he was just a good man in history. He never intended to. So it offends us. It challenges us. The gospel can be offensive. It is offensive. And so, no, I totally agree with you. I think a lot of these superhero, and I love these superhero movies. I think they're great. This idea of, justice in us, that we're created in the image of God. I think we all love the idea that there's somebody who fights for justice and is the hero and saves the day. We all love it. But the reality is, at the end, Jesus isn't one of those. Jesus is far greater than that. So, I just say, I'll bring this into land and then we'll do some Q&A, but I think it's really important for us to be on our guard. Whatever we watch, whatever we're looking at, it's like, and please, I'm never going to stand here and say what you should and shouldn't watch. Because I know that one thing will be a stumbling block, so, to one, and actually not to another. I know there are a certain level of film that I will watch. There are certain levels of film I won't watch. But I've got friends who do, and I don't judge them for it. Because actually I watch their walk in God, and I see that actually it's not affecting their walk. It's not. Do you see what I'm saying? But actually, if it becomes an obsession, then it's a thing. You start to worship something else. If all you're ever thinking about is getting back to play that game, and then you play the game till 3 a.m, and it affects you getting up in the morning and going to work, and so then I would say that's a problem. But it comes back to actually the game isn't. Gaming isn't a problem. It's the user of the game. The knife illustration that we used right at the very beginning. So please, but be on your guard, be wise at what you're looking at, but don't judge. I've stood between 2 couples. It's fantastic. I didn't say a word. I just watched it because it's funny. These 2 couples, and one was actually absolutely dead against Harry Potter, and what the other couple was absolutely dead against Lord of the Rings. But what was hysterical was that we came to realise that the one that was against Harry Potter watched all of the Lord of the Rings, and the one that was against Lord of the Rings had watched all of the Harry Potter films. And they were both like, oh, I can't believe you've watched that. this is why you shouldn't watch it. And I went, oh yeah, but I can't believe you watched that. And I'm watching this and I'm thinking, this is absolutely hysterical. Because it's just like, do you know what I mean? I'm not going to tell them I've seen them all. But because, you know, it's that sort of thing. You know, if you have a problem and a sensitivity, now I agree with you, Harry Potter can glamorise witchcraft, can glamorise this whole thing of you know, some of these things that actually we've got to be very careful, because the occult is very dangerous and very real. So we have to be very careful with that. However, you know, if I'm watching it and go, okay, right, I've got an idea of it, and I'm not watching it all the time, becoming obsessive, but actually it's helped me get an understanding of what everyone's talking about, then that's okay. Lord of the Rings, it's just like, you know, well, it's like children's horror, because actually, you know, the age range is low, but it's got all these orcs and all these horrible things, and, you know, and it's a bit scary and everything else. Well, yeah, it's okay, but I'm not scared by it, and I'm okay watching it, and it's kind of like, you know, I mean, for me, it's quite a good story, because I just think actually, it's like, but I can see some of the subtexts in it, and I can see it, and I can discern that, and that's okay. You know, but then, Peppa Pig. Who's watched Peppa Pig? Yeah? Like Peppa Pig, you know? It's just like The Simpsons. Who likes The Simpsons? Yeah? Some do, some don't, you know? It's like some watch those. But here you go. I know some people that won't watch Peppa Pig because of how some of the characters behave towards other characters. Because actually, they are downright rude. And there are scriptures that talk about honouring your parents and how you ought to behave in families and these sorts of things. And then you've got a kids show that's doing the very opposite. Do you see? So at the very least, you need to sit with the kids and kind of say, well, actually, look, you know, let's watch this, but can we talk about this together? The Simpsons. I mean, if there's not an abusive father that's made fun of, I mean, for crying, you know, the things he does with Bart and the neglect that you see there, you know, and you think, we all just go, oh, that's quite funny or whatever and stuff like that. But you watch it over several seasons, and actually it's almost like it becomes a joke to be abusive. That's not okay. And I know some people who've been really affected by watching it and going, I had an abusive father who was neglectful. And you think that's funny? Do you see? It can be everything. It's not just these big movies and stuff and that, you know. She-Ra and the Princess of Power. You know, now who's heard of He-Man? Yeah? Love He-Man. Who's heard of She-Ra? We grew up with She-Ra. Who's seen the latest She-Ra? Yeah, okay. Yeah. She's openly gay. As are a number of the characters. It's written to a totally different audience to portray a message. Who's seen Frozen? Yeah. Now, Frozen's an interesting one because you've got this whole thing of someone singing "Let It Go." You know, I don't need the world, I don't need anything. You know, which is part of this cultural message that we live in. In one sense, it's good to be in a relationship with someone because we all need love. On the other hand, we don't need anybody. So we go like this through life now because there's these two messages in our society. That one says, you know, you don't need anybody, and one says you need somebody. You know. But there were great questions around, who's the one who makes all the snow? Is it Elsa? Is Elsa makes the snow? Right, okay, so Elsa, there are all these questions around Elsa's sexuality. I mean, why? Why is that even a question? They wanted to know what Elsa's sexuality was because actually it wasn't defined because Anna obviously falls for this guy, so what's hers because she's got nobody. And then it's just like, oh, you know, is she asexual? Is she pansexual? Is she, you know, they're trying to work this out. I just think it doesn't even need answering. Do you know what I mean? It's a cartoon. It's just somebody who doesn't want to be with anybody. So is that okay? You know, it's just like, biblically it says it's actually the best thing is to not get married at all. You know, in one sense, but most of you need to be married, so be married, you know. And so you've got that. Glee. Anyone seen Glee, the TV series Glee? No, you see, no, again, it's a very feel-good type of thing. But, you know, again, you see, what I'm trying to do is show you that, you know, there are things for small kids, there are things for older kids, there are things for teenagers, and there are things for adults, and they will all be vehicles for the message of the age. Of course they will. Because that's what makes them popular money-spinning stories, as they have done through the decades. We just have to be wise and aware of what those messages are in order that we can instruct our children and be aware and wise ourselves and talk to the world around us. Okay? Is that all right? So I just wanted to kind of do that as a kind of, you know, I really wanted just to look at kind of current culture and get us thinking. When you hear a song, you know, it's just like I listen to a song, and goes, that's a good song. I said, yeah, I don't know. Why? Well, have you heard the words? You know, sometimes you hear people humming a song and you're thinking, do you know what you're singing? Do you know, oh my goodness, do you actually mean that? You know, yeah, but I'm one of these ones that says, you know, I like worship songs. I can be a little bit anal with it. It's just like, you know, that one that says, oh, I feel like dancing, it's foolishness that I know. Do you know that one? You know, and when the world has seen the light, they will dance with joy like I'm dancing now. And of course, you say that, I'm thinking, none of us are dancing. So, you know, so I stopped saying those words because I'm thinking, actually, I'm not actually dancing. And then somebody said, yeah, but you might be dancing in your heart. I said, oh, okay, that's a good answer. But, you know, do you know what I mean? So I'm quite literal. That's just who I am. But I want to encourage us all to just be a little bit more aware of the things that come in and the things that therefore come out. Because as we started, we read, didn't we, that actually it's out of the overflow of the heart the mouth speaks. And it's what we put in is often what comes out. And so if we're filling ourselves with what is right, what is good, what is true, what is pure, then actually those are the things that tend to come out. If we're filling ourselves sometimes with some of the no other word for it, you know, that we've got around us, then sadly that begins to affect how we think and therefore how we react and what comes out.